8 months ago, we cut our dappled willow shrubs down all the way to the ground in order to give them a fresh start. In this video, I'm going to show you how they look today in early November. I'm Laura from Garden Sanity, and first I want to give you a little bit of a recap, just to show you why we did what we did. So let's get started. Back in 2009, we planted our first dappled willow shrub, and over the years, we took cuttings from that shrub, called propagating, to create more shrubs. Eventually, we had a gorgeous living wall of dappled willow. We were good about pruning them, but we basically were cutting the outermost parts of the shrub to keep them looking neat and tidy. We weren't concerned about their height and spread, as we loved how big it was growing. We didn't realize that the entire middle of the shrubs had died out. And as I mentioned in the video called The Truth About Dappled Willow, which sounds like one of those titles for a juicy tell-all book, if you don't pay attention to your dappled willow, 3 things can happen. First, it will grow out of control. Second, the inside will be dead while the outside is alive. And third, the leaves won't have that beautiful variegated color. Instead, the leaves will be mostly green. Our dappled willow had all of these things and was overgrown and out of control. They needed an extreme makeover and extreme pruning. Fast forward to March, 8 months ago, and my husband and I cut down the dappled willow all the way to the ground. This extreme pruning is called coppicing, and it's done to stimulate fresh growth and rejuvenate the plant. We basically were starting over with our dappled willow shrubs. Within 3 weeks, the leftover stumps had a ton of buds forming on them. And 7 weeks after coppicing, we had low-growing pink shrubs. Aren't they cute? I've got an entire video playlist on dappled willow, which I'll link to at the end of this video and in the description area below, so you can see exactly how we prune these down. So here's what the dappled willow shrubs look like today in early November. And the lawnmower just started at a neighbor's yard, so if you can hear that, that's just life, isn't it? Okay, so you see this guy. This just happened 3 weeks ago, and I will talk about that in a minute, but yes, that's brown. We don't like that. And then there's the last shrub. So the lovely white vinyl fence is 6 feet tall, so as you can see, some of these are already reaching the top, which is wonderful. This guy over here is a little bit shorter because he had some kind of fungus, and I did have to trim a little bit of it off, and then I put some neem oil on it in the summertime. So he's a little bit shorter. So other than that one shrub that I had to prune because I thought there was a little bit of a fungus on it after so much rain, I really haven't pruned these shrubs at all. Now, we did have an orphan baby bunny in the backyard. And it was born, and its sibling and mom left it, and it was stuck here back here. We could not get it to leave. So it did, in its first few weeks of life, I let it munch on the dappled willow. So some natural pruning did occur, but it was just the little bunny, and it was just some leaves from the bottom. So there's 3 things I do want to point out about the shrubs. Now that they're growing more upright, and I don't have any of those wonky sideways growing stems, the growth looks really nice, and it's exactly how I want it. It's growing up and out, but it's a nice vase shape. And what I also want to point out is the nice sturdy stems. They're pretty thick. All this is new growth since the springtime. It's wonderful. So I hope this shows you and gives you the confidence that you can prune this down to nothing, and it's going to grow back nice and healthy for you. This time of year, the leaf color is predominantly a solid green, but you do see some variegated color here on some of the leaves still yet. But I'm not too worried about the solid green. It should be fine next spring. So let's look at this brown shrub first. Like I said, this happened about 3 weeks ago. Just one day we looked outside and we were like, it looks like it's kind of yellow. And then we just kind of watched it. Didn't look like any fungus was on it. There was nothing on the leaves that would indicate, anything was wrong. And it just started getting brown over time. We have no idea what happened. It couldn't be some errant herbicide or anything like that because, the ones on either side are beautifully green. So we don't really know what happened. Now, on a good note, what I am noticing is here you've got some green that is growing out of these other brown stems. So that tells me that this shrub isn't dead. So what I am going to do is I am going to prune this down, and I normally wait until spring to prune, but I'm going to do it now because I'm not quite sure what it is on the shrub that made all of this go brown, and I just want to remove it, and then I'm going to spray everything with neem oil. Like I said, I am hopeful, seeing this green growth, that the shrub will come back. And you know what, if for some odd reason it doesn't, I have a bunch of dappled willow cuttings that should be ready to go next spring that I can put in the ground. So here's how the shrub looks now that I've pruned everything away. These taller stems are the ones I can tell are still alive. So you can see, for example, this is green, so you can tell that that's a live stem. Some of these other stems are definitely dead and break. And that's a lot of dead stems. I mean, you can just tell all of these are dead. I do not know what happened. But like I said, there is still new growth. So I'm just going to leave this looking like this now, and I will do a thorough pruning and removal of all the dead twigs. I'm going to do that next spring when I do my really good pruning. For this, at least I can see now what's alive, what's not. And here's also something for me to consider, because early on, this shrub here, you can see on the left, this one was the original one we planted. And at the time that it was still really small, we put the cuttings in for this next one that I just trimmed off. And then we subsequently did that with all of the other shrubs. But, you know, if this one died off, it actually wouldn't be a big thing, because we actually planted these too close together. I mean, it's another mistake that you can learn from. These grow so big and so wide that I actually would not plant them as close as I did. If it lives, great. If it doesn't, that's not a big deal, because both of these plants will fill in on either side of it. In fact, you can see what this one did. This one started growing just kind of straight up and not even growing into the other one. So I'm not that concerned as I thought I would be. And up from these shrubs, we've got space where I'm going to be putting more dappled willow cuttings that I'm growing right now in pots. Put those in the ground hopefully in the spring. And then we have this guy who's also grown from a cutting. He's just a little lonely up here by himself. And by the way, dappled willow doesn't really have any appreciable color. The leaves just kind of get yellow and drop off. But that's okay. It's so pretty in all other seasons, including the winter with the red stems, so I'll forgive it for not having great fall color. So unless you run into any problems, like I showed you with the brown shrub, wait to do any pruning until early spring. For me here in Zone 7, Southern New Jersey, that's going to be early to mid-March. For you, depending on your growing zone, it could be early, it could be late. It all depends. If you're not sure when a good pruning time is, one thing I always suggest is look at your shrubs. If you start to see little buds on them, little leaves, that's a good time to prune. And that way you can't really make any mistakes. Now, if it's going to be your first time pruning, I've got you covered, because next spring I'm going to do a complete pruning video. It's not going to be coppicing, it's not going to be anything extreme, cutting it down to the ground. It's going to be a good old-fashioned pruning job. So in the meantime, let the leaves fall off the shrubs, enjoy the reddish colored stems in the winter, and watch my videos on the Dappled Willow playlist here on my channel. That's going to give you the background on the shrub, and it's also going to show you all the mistakes I made so that you don't make those same mistakes. Until next time, happy gardening.